All right, we're 1 minute past, so we might get started. There's a reasonable amount of content to get through. There are people joining, so we can get through the preliminary bits as they come in. It's really good to see. There's quite a lot of people. Excellent. So hello, my name is David Manning. I'm here with Nabil. We're presenting the European Plant User Community Virtual Meetup for June 9th, 2020. While waiting for people to come in, if you're having audio issues due to streaming bandwidth or anything like that, if you're not aware, you can dial in and use phone for the audio as well as your computer to see the video. And if you have any questions or looking for the question panel in the webinar tool, there should be a little button there with the questions on it, and that will give you the ability to ask questions in the formal manner. I'm going to see if I can turn on my mouse pointer, if I can see how to do that. Spotlight, there we go, how's that? All right, and now I can't click on anything. Now I can't click anything, I'll turn that off. There you go. All right, let's not use that. Okay, so before we begin, everybody will be muted to start with. If you raise your hand, we can let you ask a question. Yes, this session is being recorded. Can Nabil and somebody else please confirm you can hear me? There should be audio. Someone in the Q&A saying there's not.
I can hear you perfectly. So.
Okay, that's good. That's excellent. So everybody else will be muted because it is being recorded, and it will be available on the customer success web pages and also on YouTube, which we'll cover in a minute. If you have a question, please pop it into the Q&A panel. Thank you, Itan, for doing that as an example. And you can ask us at any time. If you want to do it verbally, raise your hand and we'll unmute you and allow you to ask the question verbally. So this is me. My name's David Manning. I'm a designated sports specialist who is based in Sydney, Australia, actually. I specialise in Plant 3D and P&ID, as well as a sort of other tools. A number of years in the plant industry, and I've actually been with Autodesk for 5 years now. That's an old slide. And we'll drop over to, we're obviously missing Nabil. I'm not sure what happened there.
No, that's fine.
I'll turn you on.
That's okay.
There he is. It's been hidden.
Yeah.
My European candidate has been hiding it. And go back to present. Okay, so Nabil, yep, based in there in Europe, and who some of you will hopefully be familiar with. And I see the numbers coming in and slow down, so that is good. Me, and we'll skip a bit on. So safe harbor statement is we do tend to talk with questions about the future of products. Safe harbor statement is about what we would tell you is what we understand is the facts today. It is not an official statement from Autodesk. It is what we as specialists understand the future to be. If you do have any need to make business decisions or plans on these statements, please validate anything that's future facing with Autodesk directly and officially. If you want to read that in your own time, I would recommend doing that. So today, as usual, we go through the general overview of the session, talk about what's going on. Today's theme is the new Ortho functions for Plant 3D 2021, do's and don'ts while creating orthographics. Obviously, we're always talking about orthographics today. That's our theme. Handling xrefs with ortho generation and using advanced steel and Inventor models inside plant drawings and ortho for the purpose of ortho generation. And as always, we have a questions and follow-up at the end. I don't know if we'll have time to go through the Q&A from last month, but we've got another tip there I can give you on that as well. So by the end of today, we're hopefully to give you an understanding how ortho creation works inside Plant 3D and some do's and don'ts while doing that. Understand how AutoCAD Plant 3D uses xrefs in the models as part of that orthographic process, and to help you understand how to work with the models when they're coming in from Inventor and Advanced Steel. Okay, I think we're missing a few things. I'm going to change this view, and I think we're missing a few slides. No, we're not. Okay. I apologise for that. This is a deck I've grabbed from someone at a short notice, and it's not what I was expecting. So, new features in Plant 3D 2021. Right from the get-go, major thing from the orthographics perspective is the transparent insulation in Model 3 in 3D modeling. Okay, so that is happening in the 3D modeling side as well as in the orthographics side. The other major thing, of course, was the collaboration projects. That brings on a whole new discussion. If you want to know more about that, go back and grab the recording from April where we covered that in depth, and a few other things in the last month as well. So insulation can be displayed in the model and in the orthographics in three different ways. Sorry, in the orthographics in three different ways. In the models, it can be turned on or it can be turned off, and has some nice visibility stuff we'll cover in a moment. But in the orthographics, you can show the pipelines as you see them today, which was with no insulation visible, or you can turn on the insulation and it becomes solid line insulation, and the pipes then become hidden within that insulation. Or alternatively, we can show the insulation as a dashed line surrounding the pipe. Big advantage, of course, is now that we know the thickness of the insulation, we can do more in-depth visible clashing or spacing and see how things are actually going to fit together. It isn't exact, of course. Insulation never really is that exact, but it gives you a much better idea. At least we can see it now. The existing Ortho drawing uses the insulation tool to place the insulation symbol. So the one you've been using before, where we used to put it on, it was just a symbol. It is exactly the same tool as we had previously. The difference now is that it now fits inside the insulation symbol, which wasn't there previously. And in this case here, we can see this is a 20mm thickness heat conservation insulation. So, just got a little bit of video here. I think it has audio. I might mute that, which was a demonstration by one of our other specialists. Again, showing here at the top the insulation, the transparent insulation in the 3D model, the three different styles, and the actual symbology in the orthographic there. I'll jump this forward because we don't want to sit through the whole 7 minutes of that. So we can see here inside the Plant 3D model, it's quite clever in that the insulation is now shown as transparent. And so that you can see the piping that you're actually modeling, but we can also use the transparency to be able to see where the insulation and the scope goes to. So we can actually see that thickness. He talks quite a bit in this presentation. Jump through a little bit, and we can see there, I'm just going to pause that so we don't lose it. The insulation becomes a new layer. So we've got the pipe on the line number layer, we've got the fasteners that get added in, and now we have insulation on a separate layer, which allows us the functionality to be able to specify the colors and the styles for that layer as well, and that can be consistent across the insulation components. And it's attaching there to the orthographics. I'm not sure. Okay, so going through creating, so we're still in the source files there. We're creating the orthogonal view, and you can see there we've got the hidden line pipe and the insulation tool now added. I'll pause that right there. So where we previously had hidden line piping where you could have the different methods for displaying the actual piping, now we have an additional button that is showing the insulation styles as well. And as we just referred to previously, there is no insulation, solid line insulation, which is the hidden pipe beneath that, and hidden line insulation, which means that the pipe is the primary, but you can still see the insulation with the dashed line on the outside. So I'm just trying to find that right little jog point there. It loads that view, place it as normal, and we can see in this particular case, you can see there he's selected pipe view with dashed insulation. And again, if he goes into the orthographic view, you can see there is a view-specific installation layer as well, so that can be manipulated if need be. Oops, sorry, I'm going to leave that. Went too far. Talking about the settings. So in the orthographic settings, again, if you want to control the layers where things are going, you have the insulation layer there. Going into the properties is where you can set that. And this is how it will set it up by default. So you can have that as the way you prefer it out of each individual case. When that's obviously complete, you can go back in and you're done. So that's just the changes to the insulation section. Thank you, Nabil. I was just seeing questions there. Thank you, Nabil, for continuing with that. And if you want to add in the insulation tool, same as always, we can click on that in the ribbon there. We can select the pipe, and it comes in automatically in that it knows where it is. Of course, the actual hide of the pipe won't happen until you regenerate the view, which I believe is going to do just momentarily. If you update that view, and then we get that gap in the piping showing it properly. Okay, so if you haven't used that before, use that. And the 15 and the H are coming from the pipe specs. This pipe properties, sorry, not specs. And of course, if you need to adjust that, you can grab the grips on each end and drag it to make it longer or shorter, depending on what you actually need to do. And then updating the view again will change that to the piping beneath it to match the required block size. Nice and easy and sweet, and actually looks pretty good, I must admit. And you can delete that if you need to, and when you update the view again, it repairs all the broken pipes. So, nice and fairly simple. Did we get all the questions answered on that particular feature? So looking at one question, does the insulation enhancement also show in the isometric view? Isometrics do show insulation. I'm actually not entirely sure of the extent of that. We'll come back to that. And can we change the insulation view line viewing on? Can we change the insulation line viewing any other line type instead dotted? I actually imagine that is set in the layer type. I haven't actually tried that. We could try that, keep that in mind, and we might try a bit later, but if you change it, maybe the layer type, it might change the style of the dotted line. Let's keep pressing on. So, key points we've looked at is the insulation is on a separate layer from the pipe, which is the pipe line number or the sequential number, and the word insulation as the layer. For unassigned insulated piping, you get a 0 and a layer insulation. And insulation from an xref drawing can be shown in the master drawing the same way as well. You get do's and don'ts while generating ortho drawings. So keep the source drawings in the project under the proper folder structures. While it is possible in certain file types or certain project styles to xref things from other folders, it is best practice. And what we're talking about here is best practice to keep the source drawings in the project folder, in the proper project folder. To actually have the drawings be able to be used for orthos and need to be part of the project to be able to be selected. While there are workarounds, and we talk about it later in the xrefing, to leverage xrefs and other tools, the parent drawing, the drawing you're using for the ortho, needs to be part of the project. Okay, so that's a bit of a must. You don't move the source drawing, so if you're moving things around, make sure you don't disrupt the plant system. Plant will follow the drawings around if you move them with Project Manager. But moving the location will adjust obviously the coordinates and things within the orthographics. And I'm not aware of any problem with renaming the drawings, but that may cause them to break. I haven't actually checked that. If source drawings or external reference are overwritten with newer versions, then obviously that should update the drawings in the Ortho section. Are we in the, I think we're in the do's, so that should be fine. So for example, if you're using structural drawings, one of the workarounds if you're in a networked environment, and be careful with collaboration tools, you can xref an advanced steel model, for example, into a blank Plant 3D drawing inside the project manager. When you use that structural reference drawing that has the xref embedded in it inside orthographics, so long as it's attached, not an overlay, then Plant 3D will be able to bring in that xref so long as it can be found. And that's the key thing there. So long as the xref can be found by the users generating the ortho, it will work, at least in theory. So as we're talking about there, when you overwrite, if you're using that as a process and you're saving files over the xref one, make sure you use the same name so it's actually a complete replacement. Don't edit the completed orthographic drawing in model space. So if you go in and you try to do something in the model space of the orthographic editor, other than standard functionality within the orthographic tools, so when you've got an orthographic, don't try and go in model space and start moving things around. It's not going to work. Even if it does work for you, then what will happen when the drawing gets updated, the model is re-referenced, and any changes you may get overridden. So make sure you do changes inside the model environment, not inside the model space of the orthographic drawing. Use one layout tab per orthographic drawing, so best practice there. Don't try and create multiple layouts. While that is tempting, because you can do that inside AutoCAD, Plant 3 doesn't do that very well. It can cause problems. It is best practice to have one layout tab, and you can have multiple views in any given drawing. And if you need another drawing, create a new drawing inside Plant 3D. That way, each of your drawings is unique and managed by the system and updates properly and sequentially. Plant 3D model should always be in plant coordinate system, which is close to 0, 0, 0, or the origin, and the primary or the majority of the piping and structure should be orthogonal to X and Y. In reality, the direction or the angles of the piping does not matter. It does make things a bit easier. Certainly, whenever you do the view cubes, it comes in by default in a true to X, Y, and Z box that surrounds all the models you have selected. Another good reason to keep your models in a physically smaller size where possible, so that you can reduce the size of having to stretch and pull that. So yeah, when you do anything in Plant 3D, we need to keep it close to origin, always less than 1 mile from the origin, otherwise you will see really odd and difficult behavior. And same goes for orthographics. And as I said, if you've got things at angles, expect them to be, the boxes to be a bit weird, because it doesn't follow the length of the pipes. It is purely X and Y to the world coordinate. We have a link here, and I'm going to click on that, and it should open my browser for me. It'll take a moment to explain how to work with real-world coordinates in Plant 3D. And of course, if you've probably seen it with the isometrics, we can change that. But if you're trying to work in real-world coordinates in a plant facility with actual rotation, particularly around the isometrics, you can use actual coordinates. In the orthographic world, it's not so easily. And we can see the workarounds here. It's really only for the isometrics. Orthographics, we need to deal with that in a different process. Okay, so presentation will be made available on the site later on, and the link will be there for you. So if you are working real-world coordinates for your construction isometrics, then that is easily enough to do, but you're still going to keep the plant model near the origin. And use proper workflows and file formats when incorporating models and drawings from other Autodesk and non-Autodesk products. So what we're talking about there is, again, it's the xrefing or managing files from really any product, but particularly Advanced Steel or Revit or any other product. Make sure you follow the recommended best practice workflows for that. Again, if things that don't line up properly, they can break, and they can be quite difficult with orthographics. One of the tricks with orthographics is that all the intelligence is linked to the component ID. So if you delete and replace a pipe, it will lose the intelligent views. So that can be a problem with using external tools. So I'm getting distracted by the Q&A. I shouldn't do that because that's why Nabil's here. Okay, how to create a custom Ortho template. Under the Home tab in the Project panel, select Project Manager and Project Setup. So start Project Setup, and then under the Ortho drawing settings, there's a title block and display section, and that is, we're in the Ortho section here. This block is the title block and display. This tool allows you to set a path. So this is the path you can see here, and we will touch on this in the real product in a bit. I just want to make sure we don't run out of time, so I'll make sure I cover everything. And if we've got time, we'll come back and we can go through some live demonstrations, which what I really want to do. So we've got the full path there. In fact, I will jump over here, and I'm just going to open this in the background while we talk. So we've got the path here. That is the full path to your drawing template. Okay, so that's so if you're looking for your template, that's where you're going to find it. This is basically inside the plant project under the Ortho styles folder. You can see that there, and this particular example was taken from a default project. The Ortho drawing output folder specifies the location of the drawings, and if you're looking in the paths section, you'll see the output folders as well. Ortho generation options includes a tool that shows a hidden line piping by default. Maybe we'll come to that. So at the bottom here, this is what we're talking about when we're in the 3D view creation window. When you are selecting the piping mode, it is telling it to, by default, show hidden line piping as the standard option, if you like. We also do have these two options here for the way the piping corners are shown, whether you want the center lines to, in this case here, curve around with the elbows, or if you want them to be to a sharp corner for a little bit easier for dimensioning. I'm not sure what is most common in Europe these days. I think I typically used curved in the past in my experience, but it can go both ways. Obviously personal preference. Okay, so we just drop here, we can go to the Ortho section. There is only the one tab there. We have the preview of the Ortho template there. We have the path to that template file. Now it is best if you need to edit that, and we will come back into more detail, so it's on two windows. Rather than going through manually finding it, come into here and click on this button, and that will open that file. And when it's finished, this is where we do our settings. All right, so if we add something in here, it'll be reflected in our orthos as well. So this is around setting up the title block, and we will come back to this in a bit. Okay, next slide. So things to configure for custom orthographic templates. So under the Ortho settings, the configure panel, Ortho generation settings, the dialog appears. And we had a look at that. The layer setup options and styles and dimensions multi-leader. So this is the way it's going to look and feel. And we also have the BOM setups. The first BOM setup, which is the simple, grouped, and independent columns. We also have tool places. The tool itself places the table on the template. So if we go back to have a look at that, and that we're in there. So orthographic settings. In here, this is where we can configure what layers things are going to end up in our orthographic drawing. So when the orthos are generated, it creates effectively a flat shot for each view from the model. It does this live every time. And we can choose to have orthographic relevant layers, which is extremely useful, and that way by default to define certain things. And we can see here, we mentioned it before, the insulation layers. We can change that if we need to. You can call that whatever you like. But the insulation is by default, and by clicking on here, we can pick the layer we want it to be. You would have to create that first, quite obviously. These are all the default ones, and you can change them or edit them as you see fit. And if you need to change the properties, this little button at the top, which is our layer properties button. Oh, come on. There we go. Expand that out a little bit. is the layer properties that we're going to have or see in the orthographic. Let's expand these and see what we've got on. So we're talking about, before there was a question around the insulation style or the line style. So we use -2. I'm going to be sneaky and change that to something a bit unique. Let's pick a center line, center 2. And leave it there because I want to see how that works when we do a live demo. And you can change your colors in here as well. And this will affect how it's going to be generated on the orthographic. So if you generate an orthographic and it's not right here, not the way you want, you need to come back in here and edit it. That'll change in the template. The only problem is it's not going to reflect that way on the drawings you've already created. I think you have to do them independently. So colors, styles, line types, all the usual things you'd be familiar with, they can all be edited in here. When we're done, we hit close. If for some reason you would prefer to have your, and I know a number of people do, like to have the layers used in the orthographics the same as your 3D models, you can do that through this tick box, and that locks the layers to the same as in the 3D model. So you'll have the piping, the insulation, and the fasteners layers, and you can configure those as well. We do, again, define here, as far as orthographics is concerned, the small bore piping, in this case, smaller than 2 inches. And again, we're talking about the styles or the look of the orthographic drawing. We've got dimension styles, multi-letters, text styles here. There's only one thing in the list, and that is we have an option. So, but we've wanted to create more. We can open that, click that button there on any one of those 3 options. It opens the standard dialog for creating styles, in this case, the dimension styles. And we can create a new style, and I'll just leave it as copy as. Set it up how we see, however we want to make it happen. And we can create that, hitting close, and now we'll have both to select from. And the selection is obviously the default style that will be used. And again, multi-leader and text styles as well. And I am going to hit OK on that because I wanted some of that to stay. So the other thing we want to talk about is the table setup. So clicking on that table setup, which is the next button in the ribbon, this is where we can set up our bill of materials. So we've got in the table, in the first table layout section, the first thing we have here is the table type. So this varies everything else in the window. So you start here, and in the default list, we have bill of materials with a cut list, and an itemized one. So the basic one here, bill of materials, and we've got a simple BOM, which is this format. We have grouped by category titles, and we have grouped by independent columns. All changes the format. And if you haven't played with these, definitely encourage you, go have a look and see how they look and feel, different to each other. You can turn columns off here fairly easily to show or hide these columns, and you can pick columns or to add columns to the list by clicking on this button down here and browsing through to the property you need. So if you've got custom properties, you can add them in, or whatever other fields you might like. And you can also use a single column for schedule and pressure. So this is this, if you've got schedule and class there, if you add pressure in as well, you can have a single column, which we're using here. So that'll be separated by a /. In the settings, again, it breaks it down. And again, this is setting up the XML for the bill of materials. So we can sort the bill of materials, ascending by size or description. We can tell whether we want to see existing pipe or not, how it handles cutback elbows and fixed length pipe, and the way that length is described. And in the descriptions generally, which descriptions you're going to use for the actual description field in the bill of materials. Now, if you want to, you can put in the bill of materials by default. Let's just pick a random spot here and drop that in the drawing. Now that size is actually editable, and you can change it, but it will tend to snap back to that size. Sorry, getting distracted by the Q&A again. I'll leave that there, and I'm going to say I'm finished editing my title block, and I'm going to hit return to project. And I think I've made a mistake because I can't save that until I check it out. So this is a collaboration project, so it'll take a moment. I'm going to have to do a checkout here, and that's going to check out the settings to me, but because I made those changes, hopefully they'll stay, because I checked it out rather than try to save it. In any case, that deals with the settings and is how it will be set up. So I'm going to hit OK on that, and that will hopefully check all that in and save it, and I'll go back to the presentation while that happens. So creating orthographic models from xref drawings, particularly from Inventor. So when we're talking about models from Inventor, it's important to note most people receiving models from manufacturers or suppliers are getting them in step files or other formats, or even Inventor native files. They're often extremely detailed. Even if they're shrink wrapped, they're often got a high level of detail, and I see it quite often that people are trying to model with those high level detail components inside their plant space, and it's just destroying performance. And in a lot of ways, that's unnecessary. Oh, I'll go back to that. However, I understand there are times that you may need that. So what we're suggesting as the best practice workflow is, if you're getting files from external vendors, use a tool like Inventor or Fusion to simplify them. Inventor's the better one at this point. So if you use Inventor, simplify them down, create a shrink wrap, which means it takes like a glad wrap or a vacuum pack around the outside, and that's all you see. As part of that process, you can create a dynamic view level of detail on that model so that you're only seeing simplistic components. So you can get rid of the bolts and the holes and maybe the fins on the motor and just see it a lot more simple for performance purposes. That can then be exported, and if that model needs to be updated, that is a dynamic process, so it just needs to be exported again to an ADSK, which, yes, sounds like Autodesk because it is our file format for transferring of manufacturing data. And that then file can then be brought into Plant 3D in a native way. So if I just come back over to here, I'll just quickly open a random model. Yeah, we'll just do a small one actually. Let's just use a local version of an advanced steel one. So yeah, it can be brought in as the piece of equipment. Now that it's been shrink wrapped, it's really light, and the performance in the model is going to go much more quickly. And that can also, now, so if you bring that into a Plant 3D piping model, that will be automatically included in the orthographic drawings. However, if you want to have an equipment specific model and xref that in, that will still function just fine and bring that into the model space. The other way to deal with that is, we've talked about with other people, is again recommending, if you want a high level of detail version for orthographic creation, use the light version in your normal process, and when you're running generate the orthos, have a second model or a second layer or a second view in your model equipment model that has a much higher level of detail but still shrink wrap model coming out of Inventor. So you can turn that on and the low level detail one off and use that only for your orthographic drawings. But the low level one is much easier to model from. So talking about that, now we're in a structural drawing, don't worry about that. I think I'm not in the right workspace. I'm in a P&ID workspace, so let's change that to 3D. And when we're talking about bringing in equipment, in the equipment field, you'll see this convert Inventor equipment to Inventor AEC to a plant piece of equipment. So when you hit that button, it'll ask you for a file. When you go and browse and find that file, now I don't have one on hand for this demonstration, it'll grab that file and create the visual for it. It will ask you, because it doesn't know what it is, whether it's a pump or a tank, it'll ask you to apply the equipment type to it, and then that will allow it to absorb all the settings. Now the big advantage of using Inventor, I don't think we have it in the next one, we don't, is eye properties that can be assigned in Inventor, which means the manufacturer or the designer can tell the Inventor model that the nozzles are where they are. They can add attachment points, the size, the schedule, all those sort of things. And when the 80K file is exported, that goes with it, and Plant can read that so that you know exactly what size that nozzle is supposed to be, what spec it is, all those sort of things. Yep, talking about there about creating equipment models and using them as xrefs. Okie dokie. So the next one, of course, is so you've got your plant model, you've got your equipment, and then you've got your pumps and your tanks and all the fun bits and pieces. Now we need to stop things falling down going between the two bits of equipment, typically structural steel. Now, there's any number of different ways to do that. Most people have a tendency to like to work in one particular format, whether it's DWG or something else. Revit Structure is a great tool for doing structural detailing. Advanced Steel or AutoCAD Advanced Steel is also another great tool and is really, really good. Similar, creates manufacturing level detail drawings the same way Plant 3D creates construction isometrics. So it's really, really good. And if you've got the two things installed on the one machine or the object enablers installed, we can read those objects in Plant 3D and we can create the orthographics using those advanced steel objects. Warning there is they can be very heavily detailed and there's no easy way to reduce that level of detail necessarily. So that is something to be aware of. If you've got big structures, there's a bit of management that needs to happen. No, there is no editing of an ADSK file possible. It is a block. You might be able to go in and muck around with the block, but generally no, you would have someone edit the original file and re-export it. Sorry, jumping in there on you, Nabil. Back to the advanced steel stuff. So in Plant 3D, we can create structures. We've got the structural components. That's this little tool over here, all these bits and pieces. We can create some structures to standards and build out these structures. Now this is actually, ironically enough, an advanced steel model. I should have known I was being that organized. You can export that and get that into advanced steel or Revit Structure in an intelligent way. What we're talking about here is placing the original advanced steel drawing inside the project directory. So in the same way here, I've got an advanced steel directory. We can have the advanced steel files in Plant 3D. It's a DWG. Plant isn't concerned. There are no plant elements in this drawing. It is purely advanced steel, and that can be there without any problems. The only thing is if you've got a collaboration space or a vault environment, the advanced steel guys will still need to check these out so they can edit them and save them back. So there is a problem there. If you're in a network environment, much less of an issue. Sorry, back over to here. So long as you've got the object enablers installed, if you don't, grab those, and a simple Google search of Autodesk Advanced Steel object enablers will give you a list. Preference that with the year as well. Make sure that the coordinate systems are matched between the Advanced Steel model and the Plant 3D project, so we should be using the same project coordinate system. Otherwise, when you bring things in, they're going to be skew. And the objects will display in the standard display mode in the orthographic drawing. So whatever you've got the model shown as here, that's how they will come into the orthographic. So I said this is an advanced steel model, and that will come in, and I've actually got an ortho over here. I'll open that while we're talking. And AutoCAD Plant 3D allows the export of structural elements if you want to. So using the Advanced Steel export, you can export those structural elements we've created to Advanced Steel to simplify that process. And the general concept there is a piping designer might need to rough out a pipe frame or a pipeway. We can do that very quickly and easily, but there's no jointing, no connections, it's just rough shapes. But that can be exported, and the structural guy can then, all they have to do then theoretically is put the joints into the connections and then create the manufacturing drawings. They can share that drawing back to Plant 3D with the same file name overriding the existing Plant 3D structural model, and that will update that with the Advanced Steel model. That has to be its individual model. It can't have any piping in it, otherwise that process doesn't work. Okay, so let's drop back to the environment here. So in the Plant 3D orthographic environment, I used that same model I was looking at to create these two views. And you can see here, we've got a bit of piping in plan view. It comes down through here, turns right 90 degrees, goes across the T and continues, and the T goes straight down and straight left, and I was going to orbit that. We can see the same thing here. When I'm talking about level of detail, you can see there that all those bolts are coming in. That does take time to generate. Same with the handrails and all that sort of stuff. Just creates more and more time in the processing. So be well and truly aware of that. I'm going to drop back over to my model, and what I'm going to do is I don't think I've got any piping with some. I'm not sure which model that was. Here it is. I'm just going to add some insulation on here. If you want to just do add a selection, all connected parts and properties. Where's my insulation thickness? Let's make that 1 inch, and insulation type, let's make it heat constant, hot cold. And let's turn on insulation display, no placeholder, insulation. And you can see there that insulation is now turned on, looking lovely. And I think if we come in here, we can quickly, I'm getting a bit off track here, we can change, we can see now the insulation layer, and if I wanted to change that to something else, let's make it a light creamy green, you can see that changes there as well. Okay, so just demonstrating that variability if you need to. Of course, you would change that in your templates and your settings rather than in the individual model if you needed to. So that's really nice, and that's just a toggle of a button there in the ribbon to show that. I quite like that, it's very nice. And if I go back to, if I save that, that'll check it in. Cautious of time, 1:45, I think we're doing well. So this is checking in my, if you haven't seen it, this is checking in all the changes that have happened to this project since I checked it out and updating it. Now if I go back to the orthographic drawing and let's update the views, update views. Now I go through and change those, and hopefully that'll show me the insulation, although I'm not sure what I set on the preferences there, so we'll see how that goes. Let's go back to the presentation while that happens. I can't move that, that's not good. So best articles and orthographic drawings. Again, bunch of hyperlinks here. There's a number of university classes, a bunch of articles in our TypePad blog and Autodesk Knowledge Network. Even some of our vendors here, so Hageman Group and the PDO team, excellent partners of Autodesk. Generally have a look at these and keep an eye on those. Like they're great resources. If you haven't seen them before, grab the presentation from the resource store and go there and have a look at them. Excellent checklists here. This top one, I've got to admit, is actually my class from 2015 Autodesk University. So it goes into great detail about what's going on. Be aware it was 2015 at the time. And we're not showing any insulation, so let's go and update that view, edit the view, and see if I can get that insulation to come in. It may not, because it was an existing drawing. It'll be an interesting test. So no insulation, so that was turned off because that was how it was when I created it. Let's do solid insulation and go OK. Hopefully that should update my views. Now the bill, I think that was the, while it's doing, I'll go back here again. Question follow-up. Okay, so I'm not going to go into that in detail because I'm sure we're going to run out of time and I want to do the demo preference. That, are there any questions while I'm doing this, the bill that I need to address now or we haven't touched on?
I think there is two more. Can we export the plant 3D model to Inventor and get that imported in plant? Can an imported plant file can be edited in Inventor?
Yeah. So yeah, I haven't actually tested that. That seems to be backwards, but yes, there is definitely a workflow to get it from plant to Inventor. It depends. It would be more of a discussion of what you're trying to achieve. If you're doing skid work, for example, it might be easier to do the piping in plant than export it, but certainly there's a discussion that, yeah, certainly there would be a way to get that in there. At the very least, I would imagine export to AutoCAD, maybe an export from Navisworks. I'm trying to remember if Inventor will do a DWG import. I don't know that you'd get the intelligence of the plant model, though. That would be the only catch. I haven't actually tested that.
Yeah, you can basically perform an export to AutoCAD from plant and then open as a normal DWG file within Inventor. However, you will lose the intelligence of the plant project.
Okay, right. Okay, not a problem. New draw, I was going to say new drawing here. Initial test. So I'm creating a new drawing just while we're talking in the background because I wanted to use those new settings from within the project. And I'm going to go new view. You'll see that title box come in. Not Pro Steel XREF testing, it's that one. That's the one. Good. Stop generate my model. Was there another one you wanted to ask while I'm doing this, Nabil?
No.
Okay, cool.
That's fine. Yeah.
Let's shrink that over a little bit. And there, and that's fine. Let's bring this one over. I don't want to go way over there. Let's go there. You know what, that'll actually do. And we're on a front view there. So I've got the insulation here shown that way. Let's show it that way because that's what we're trying to test, isn't it? Match lines, that's fine, that's fine, it's fine. I don't know what that's going to look like scale-wise. That looks not too bad. Pop that in there. That'll take a moment again because of the advanced steel. And while that's processing, just ticking through this. In the back of the presentation, there's an absolute lot of links and references. If you need to get to the presentations, again, this link here, the community resources page, these links, the pages are linked. Each one of them, we share the presentation and the recordings for each one. You can register, there's a link there for registration. Again, article link there for our Plant 3D with the Experts video blog, which is a shorter little specific topics, links to the registration page. And this one here I wanted to pause on as well. In the meetups now, we are not, we're putting these follow-up questions in as a document. So this is one from May, Plant 3D Community Meetup, May 2020 Q&A follow-up. That downloads as a PDF and you can access all the questions we couldn't answer during the session. And the other key thing is here, all the recordings now are being published to YouTube. So if I go over to here very quickly, it's still processing. I go to my YouTube page. What I'm looking for is the Autodesk Customer Success channel. And it's a bit hard to see, isn't it?
Just in between, David, we have an interesting question from Herman. He said you showed advanced steel drawing in the Plant 3D collaboration project. How does the additional files which advanced steel needs synchronized with the collaboration project?
It doesn't. Short answer, it doesn't. It is just the DWG. So there's a much longer discussion there around how to deal with advanced steel. In fact, Nabil, very interestingly enough, our consulting team or a team put together a recording that I am looking for, and I haven't found the links for, on that exact topic. Where it's the collaboration between multiple products in BIM 360, so in collaboration for Plant 2021, and what are the best workflows there, and it specifically goes into discussions around advanced steel. So that's really nice. When I found that, I'm going to put it up on the resource store page, and we might put it actually, now the question's in there, I can add it to the FAQ and I won't forget to do that, so that's always nice. So yeah, it's not, it doesn't, Plant 3D won't do it, but as a DWG handling, it can take care of that. It's kind of like an export process. So yeah, just touching on that. So we talked about it before, so I've just generated that. You can see there the line styles have come through. Looking at the center line style, so the one I set up in the template has worked, and we've got the insulation symbol. I can pick that and it will show there, which is nice, pulling the data from the database. I'm not going to regenerate that on the interest of time, not just yet. And we can see the broken lines, all the things are happening. And my favorite one, we can always say, I want to break that bit of pipe there, and that can be a bit longer too, just for the fun of it. Giving us some interesting views, and I will run that again just for the fun of it. And we'll see how that goes. Any other questions, Nabil?
Yeah, there is one question from Srinivasa asking if there is any command to remove bolts and bolt holes from the imported Advanced Steel model or Tekla model.
So it's actually a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say no, unless you modify it or simplify it from the source file.
So there is. So Advanced Steel uses. Sorry, go on.
In Advanced Steel, yeah. In Advanced Steel, you could before the import back to plant.
Yeah, again, it's an AutoCAD product, so it's largely layer driven. And I shouldn't have updated that view because I can have a look. One of the things to keep in mind as well, when Advanced Steel, for all its connections, they each have a bounding box, which is a relative space to identify the connection individually within itself. They come into Plant 3D 2 or any other AutoCAD platform. They're a layer we can turn off. I was going to go check if you can turn bolts off. You'll still get the holes if you turn bolts off because that's the way Advanced Steel works. But maybe there's a layer. If we get a chance, I'll check that before we go. But we can certainly answer that in the follow-up if otherwise.
Yeah, with the others pending questions, yeah.
It's a great question, actually. I want to check that for myself. I hadn't thought about doing that. That's a great idea. Is there any other questions there, Nabil? I don't see that. Looks like it.
Not at the moment that we didn't responded yet.
Does the insulation go over the equipment and valve? Now, this was actually covered in something recently. I don't believe it does. I'm going to say it doesn't, and if I'm wrong, I'll let you know. If it does, it's not in the nice, pretty way you'd expect. It'll just be fairly blocky and probably unlikely to follow the contours. It'll probably just continue through. But you can add insulation to the valves too, I think. No, I can't do anything right now. I shouldn't have hit update. Oh, nearly there. Okay, so if we go back to a model, let's put in a valve. I've got time, I think, don't I? So let's put in, let's run in a gate valve because that gives us. Did I just pick a bevel gate valve? I did. That was not a smart idea. That's one option. And let's pick a flanged check valve. Let's put it in the vertical. And I'll make sure it's insulation. So that's pulling up insulation. And you can see there, let's just do a regeneration. And you can see there that insulation is not covering the fittings. Now, I think the simple answer there is it's just a bit too difficult to manage that. It's all around the pipe, at least for now. And if I save that, let's go back to the insulation test. I'm sure you get exactly the same thing coming up in the Ortho view. I might trim the top off that. With any other questions, do you have a valve? I don't know how, so Tekla ones, I don't know how that comes in from a shape perspective. Advanced Steel, so this is before I go and regenerate that, lock myself out again. Advanced Steel, so I can pick that bolt. So there we go, we can turn bolts off. Where did it go? There. Turn layer off, and there you go, bolt's gone. The other one is connection boxes. So each of these wireframe boxes refers to a connection type. So I turn those off as well, and you can certainly probably script or control that. And you've even got, you can see here, a couple of, that's a grid marker. You can turn that off too if you wanted to. Don't think there's, so that those holes are part of the beam, so you couldn't get any lower than that. Let's save that and see how that comes out with 3 minutes to go. And one disadvantage using collaboration project for this demonstration. Sorry, that's what I had at the test set at the moment. And so, yeah, so YouTube list there. So what I was showing before while it's generating, this is the YouTube playlist, and you can see there Maze for Europe, America, and Asia Pacific. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of the year, so back to January. And I'm not sure when they'll get published. I was hoping it was pretty well straight away, but it's not, clearly, because I did the Asia Pacific one earlier today. But they will certainly be there soon. That's finished, so let's go back to the installation test, and let's update that view. Can I cut my check valve out? That's kind of funny. All right, so let's leave that, and I'll finish this. In the Pipes blog, if you had links to it before, we did move earlier this year, so this is the new hyperlink for it. That's long gone. Okay, wonderful. So finished there. If you are looking for the resource store, well, I keep referring to that, there is links for it there, but I've got my little hyperlink there. That is the link you're looking for, and you can grab a screen grab of that if you like, or you can wait for the presentation. If you Google that phrase, Plant 3D Community Virtual Meetup Resource Store, you should find it. And scrolling down, you'll see the subjects for the rest of this year. And I've already added the June session with the APAC presentation, which is identical to this one. Just we'll change the presenters out, and a link to the YouTube playlist if you're looking for it. And you'll see there we've got the Q&A follow-up from May. When the June one is ready, I'll update this to reflect that as well. So come back and visit if you need stuff, and we will certainly do that. And we're still waiting on there. If you haven't seen them, Autodesk is also doing a lot of great YouTube videos these days. I thought that was you talking to Bill. It is you, just from last month. Okay, so Autodesk got a lot of wonderful YouTube statements. Customer success, the AutoCAD channels, start digging through those, you'll see a lot of good content. And I'll push that back to the thank you page. And just say thank you everyone for coming. We are at the top, no, we've got another minute to go. So you've got 1 minute if there's any last questions.
I think there's no more questions on the panel, except the one we will get back and investigate a little bit internally for next month.
With regards to the minimum system configurations for Plant 3D 21, the easiest way to get to that is do a Google search for AutoCAD system requirements 2021. And the system requirements for Plant 3D are identical to AutoCAD, as is the rest of the tool sets. There is a larger hard drive requirement, minimum size or space for Plant 3D. I think it's about 10 gigabytes, but double check that, and it's just the only difference. So you'll see it's the AutoCAD specs and the Plant 3D ones. Google that, you'll come up really easily. We will put the hyperlink in the Q&A as it follows up. And there we go. So there's finished note. There is to show the valves do not show the insulation as I suspected. It is exactly how you see it in the 3D model. Not ideal, but it's early days. It's the first year it came out. Maybe in the future. If you'd like to see that, strongly recommend go to the Ideas Station and add it in as something for future development. Thank you very much. It was absolutely great to see, and so many people here and so many questions. I thought it was a question. Excellent. I look forward to seeing your questions from the future. Nabil, any closing remarks?
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much all for your participation, and thanks a lot for your support today, David, as usual.
My pleasure,
Thanks.
mate, my pleasure. Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone. Have a wonderful Tuesday.
Bye.